So why would I put cameras after capture? You'd think, well, maybe I should talk about the cameras before I talk about the capture. What I'm wanting to introduce you to is that there are so many different cameras available today that it's what's important to understand. In this ebook, I'll introduce you to the principles of making a capture based on having found our passion, based on having developed a pathway to the projects. We've now, I hope, developed some idea of what our creative life passion and project forward is. And then, of course, we've looked at the art of seeing art and the wonderful world of design principles. So now we're ready to make a capture. So captures and cameras. I've actually invited into this module to join me a master teacher of the technological side of cameras. I'm a master storyteller and I know a lot about Canon and I know a lot about Nikon, but there are many, many more devices and cameras available to us today. And so I've invited master photographer Dr. Dean Holland. Now, he has his PhD in methods of teaching. He actually runs a program here called Take Better Photographs in Brisbane. And he is going to bring in a fabulous new way of looking at technology that you can click on and visit some of the sites. He also casts a visionary eye into the future, looking at where cameras and technology are ultimately going to go. And anyone that's been taking pictures for any length of time knows that we've now got mobile devices, we've got such a plethora of camera brands and models to choose from. So the first area that we're looking at is the art of capture. So we're looking at a creative life actually using your camera. So part one deals with the capture process, and then we explore things like light and shade, composition, sharp and soft, and colour. They're the 5 elements that incorporate it. Then we move on to choosing a camera. Which camera are we going to buy to actually service our needs, our creative life purpose? And then we're going to look at the accessories that we need to go with that camera, things like lenses and tripods and cable releases, and of course there are a plethora of accessories. And then I'm going to take you for a field photo trip around Australia, looking at some tips that I've developed over my long career in wandering around this wonderful country, photographing people, places, birds, mammals, reptiles, etc. And so this is a module that as you step through it, it'll open all sorts of doors. Now, right up front, I want to remind you that photography is not about camera brands and models. There's a lot of people that get absolutely sucked into the brand and model argument. It's about capturing someone's heart. It's about making photographs that reach out and touch people. You might even do it with a mobile phone that is second hand and you inherited and it cost you $50. You know, it's not about necessarily spending $15,000 on a DSLR with a wonderful lens that's got a famous brand attached to it. So let's just start off with the art of capture. This is holding the camera to the eye. You've got your design element, you've got your composition all worked out. Now you want to make a picture that you can then take that picture and use it at a later date. We're going to look at the areas of how I've actually adopted photography. So this is my particular pathway. You might have a slight twist of lemon attached to this, but this is the path that I take for the capture of all of the photographs that I've taken, even when I was using film cameras. In fact, I started using digital cameras in 2006 and have been using them religiously ever since. So lightness and darkness, there's what the camera sees and what we see. We see it all bright and shiny. The camera will record it, whatever the camera is set up to record it. Now, right up front, I'm saying to you that I do all of my captures in RAW. That's a RAW file. Now, if you don't know what RAW and JPEG is, it's all explained very well in this particular module. But the big advantage of shooting in RAW means that you can then take it into the computer and adjust your colour and adjust whatever it is that you want to adjust from an aesthetic point of view, and to add the feeling, if you like, to that particular photograph. You might want to darken it a little bit, you might want to brighten it a little bit, you might want to add a little bit of colour. So I've given you an example here. This is a vertical photograph of a great-billed heron. A vertical photograph of a great-billed heron. This is a RAW file that has not been touched in any way, shape or form. So that's how the camera saw it. and now I bring it into my post-production and I actually crop it and I darken the edges to it and I turn it into a black and white photograph. So I've focused in on that and created what I felt in the field. This is a secretive bird, and I wanted to really get across the feeling I had during the capture process. Then we've got elements like composition, which relate to lenses, viewing position. You can see on the right I've used a wide-angle lens, on the left I've used a powerful telephoto. The car is parked, I'm shooting out of the window of the vehicle and you can see the little yellow square there, and I've cropped right in on it. So composition is the next element that we looked at. And then of course sharpness and softness, foreground, middle ground, background, nice and sharp. Here on the right hand side with a lovely sharp focus on the bird's eye and feathers, and the background's nice and soft. So we are managing the camera from a sharp and softness point of view. And throughout the module, as you'll see, there are little subsections and you'll see the little black line around them. I introduced the concept of sharpness and softness, light and dark, and then I show all the different ways you can actually control these elements in your camera to capture the photograph that really expresses what you want to say. And of course you've all heard about the old exposure triangle, which is a rather silly term because there is no actual triangle. And so what I've attempted to do here right off the bat is something that I've never seen anywhere else in the digital instructional world, and that is using your ISO as an anchor, first determining your aperture so that you get the sharpened photo, you get the depth of field, and you get to select what areas of the photograph from an aesthetic point of view. And then you use your ISO to drive your shutter speed so that your shutter speed is at the right speed to either handhold the camera with a long lens and get a nice sharp picture, or speed up the action. So the craft of capture, be very interested in the feedback when we go online with this and we do our chatting. This is a fairly new way of actually presenting the exposure triangle. I'll be very interested in your feedback that actually helps you. A lot of people struggle with that particular area. And then of course we explore choosing a camera, and what I've shown there is all the different capture, whether it's underwater, whether it's photographing birds or reptiles or whatever it is, close up, landscapes, why I use a DSLR camera. Why have I chosen to use a DSLR camera over a rangefinder camera? And I like to look through the lens and I like to be able to make those creative decisions, particularly when I'm photographing a subject material like birds and kangaroos or anything that's moving, people, sports, action, and want to frame it, and I want to freeze the action in flight. I then go through the process of determining if you, for instance, have got a very basic camera or using a mobile phone and you're really teased and excited about the idea of actually moving into the DSLR world and taking more control over the creative outcome of your images. I've actually stepped through a whole series of Q&As and challenges for you, and one of them is techniques. And of course the most important, the most commonly used technique in photographing wildlife is capturing handheld, still and action close-up photography. These are three photographers, three different camera brands, three different lenses, three different light sources. Objective, photograph the snake close up in detail. So the first one is in detail. That we also cover action photography, we cover indoor photography, we cover all the different, and then we determine what kind of camera we need to make those kinds of captures. And of course we've got aerial photography, drone photography, what sort of drone should I buy, and so on. And then we move into accessories. And of course lenses are number one. I've just simply discussed the primary lenses that I use, the 70 to 200 lens, the 80 to 100 millimetre lens, and why we use long lenses to give that compressed foreground, background, and wider angle lenses to give that sense of depth. So these are the principles that we are looking for when we actually change our lenses to make the various different captures. And a very, very important accessory that I like to stress is the right kind of tripod head. Most people use I'd say 95% of people that do workshops with me or tours with me have very flimsy tripods. They're tripod head, you know, the old sagging, you know, you put your camera on the tripod and the head sags down. Investing in a really, really good tripod and a three-way geared head. The three-way geared head lets you align the camera and make little minor adjustments when you're doing it, particularly valuable for very close-up photographs of flowers and fantastic for shooting landscapes. And then at the end of the book, in closing the book, we wander around Australia doing a whole range of examples showing the settings on cameras and the methodology for photographing flowers, for photographing insects, for photographing architecture, the human face, many adventures right around Australia. So I think you'll enjoy this module that you can wade your way through. It's a big module and it's probably in the suite of 6 the most interesting for people that are new to this activity, that are yet unsettled as to what kind of camera they want to buy. And of course, when you visit Dean's website, which is in the section choosing a camera, you'll be able to see a different way of looking at it. Cameras under $500, cameras at $1,000, cameras at $1,500, cameras at $2,000, cameras for travel, cameras that are light for hiking. This kind of breakup will help you make that sort of decision. So having explored cameras and capture, I think you'll find this is an exciting module. We're then going to be moving into a very exciting area, the digital darkroom, which is where I like to use the word play with our images to bring out, if you like, the passion and the feeling that we had for that magic moment in time when we made that capture in the field, maybe months earlier, maybe even years. I'm actually having fun in digital darkroom playing with images that are 10, 15, 20, 30 years old. So never throw out those old slide photographs because we can bring them to life, and that's what we're going to be exploring in the digital darkroom.